Hi, everybody. Good morning. Really early morning for people on the West Coast. Still early morning, 10:30 here for people on the East Coast, although I'm up at 6:15, so it already feels like I'm ready for lunch already. Today, I'm having a talk outside. I mean, look at this setting. This is my deck behind me. I turn it around. So, this is got some plants going on over there. You can't see my corn. I turned my camera, but I just planted corn actually last weekend. I can't show you. And already one of the bunnies has pulled out some of the corn. So we'll see how that goes long term. And typically I'm pretty not lazy about going outside. I love being outside in my backyard, in my safe space, even more so once COVID hit. But I've always kind of been a homebody and liked being at home. And I'm kind of lazy to go out and go on a hike or go on a walk. When I lived in California, I did that a lot more, going to the beach. But since moving to Quebec and Montreal, it's just so cold most of the year, and I hate being cold. And even when I dress warm, I'm just reluctant to go out. But I know that nature and the outdoors is super important. And my guest today, Michelle Olson, she's going to talk about how healing and important it is to be outside. It feeds our soul, it feeds our heart, it feeds our mind. So many layers of us. Welcome, Michelle. So glad to have you.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm so glad to be here and be outside with you.
Yeah, this was Michelle's idea. Exactly. Sorry, I interrupted you, Michelle. This was Michelle's idea. She's like, we're talking about the outdoors. We got to sit outside. I'm like, you're right. So bear with us if there's some glitches in the Wi-Fi connections. I can see my bar. It's pretty low, so I'm hoping I'm not going to tap out here. Let me just tell you a bit about Michelle. She's a social gerontologist. She has her PhD. She's licensed, board certified, and a registered creative arts therapist. And she has a specialization in memory care. She and I connected through LinkedIn very organically a few years back. I sent her a copy of my book, an advanced copy, and she read it. And even thank you so much, Michelle. And she's endorsed it, and one of her quotes is in the book. So thank you, Michelle, for doing that. Michelle's worked with older adults in different elder care settings and community settings for over 20 years. She currently runs the New York office of Clear Guidance, which we'll talk about what that is. It's a care management practice. They do consulting. And she's also a huge nature lover. And if you follow her, you'll see that she's posting a lot of her tree hugging activities outside. And she's founded a nonprofit organization called Evergreen Minds, which we'll also talk as well. And that provides experiences for people living with dementia and their care partners to engage in and with nature. So again, welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
So first, talk to me a bit about how you got interested in working with older adults. I sort of fell into it accidentally when I was just making a move and looking for any job in the next city, and sort of fell into it and then realized I loved it. Now it was the universe probably directing me there, but I didn't consciously seek it out. How did you end up in a world of dementia and memory care? Because it's not an easy place to be.
Right. So like you, I didn't plan to go, into elder care at all. I had worked with adult populations. I worked in a children's hospital, but it was my second internship when I was back in the 90s, when I was doing my second internship at a veterans hospital. It was World War II veterans. And that was it. Like, honestly, that was it. I mean, it was so eye-opening for me. And once that internship left, I was hired temporarily while the art therapist had a baby. And then after that ended, I was like, you know what, this is my bag. This is my wheelhouse. So I went to a nursing home that just opened up, and I applied there. And that's it ever since. What I love.
And so what is it that you love about working with the population of dementia? Because I find there are many days that I feel really sad for the individual who's living with the disease, when they're agitated, obviously uncomfortable. And I know we can talk about ways where we can reduce that with nature and other things, but and the struggles with families and them saying, my mom doesn't know who I am. What's the point of even coming? I mean, there's so much, heartache in that world. What is it that keeps you engaged in it?
Right. So I do agree that there is, a level of sadness sometimes that comes in this work. But being an art therapist and coming from a kind of a life enrichment background, I find it uplifting. Actually, I find people living with dementia are my people because I feel that they have what I've heard called superpowers, right? That they're more creative and kind of more easygoing, right? So I just find working with people with dementia to be really uplifting versus depressing. And also, I think to provide these opportunities for people to communicate in other ways, creative and expressive ways, it's really important. And I think we need more of it. So we'll talk more probably about that. But
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you said you find them more creative. And I wonder if that's because there's a filter that's gone. It's sort of removed, like that self-consciousness piece. Usually at the onset of dementia, there's a heightened self-consciousness because you know something's not right. You're aware something's not right, but you can't really make sense of it. And so you sometimes withdraw and become more self-conscious about it. But then there's this like kind of shift where that self-consciousness is removed. And that's an interesting piece you're bringing up, Michelle, because I wonder if it's like freedom for people to sort of really be who they are and express themselves in a way that we may not otherwise do because we're worried about people's judgments.
oh, spot on. Absolutely. And I think when people, particularly, early in the disease process, people may have more resistance, especially if they have some creative experience. If they were, let's say, artists professionally, then sometimes I do see some resistance because they're aware that things are different, that they're not creating in the way that they used to. But I never talk about somebody, their art experience in the past. I always say, you are a creative, you are an artist, because we are who we are throughout our whole life. And so I think you're absolutely right that sometimes they're more open, like the sense of humor, the creative expression, all of that comes out even more, particularly in say FTD, right? Frontotemporal dementia. We see people that have never created before all of a sudden have these creative gifts blossom, and it's really beautiful to witness.
And one of the things you kind of just alluded to was the presence, like saying you are creative, you are an artist right now. And I think that's a gift that I find the enlightening piece of working with older adults is that, and the caregivers is that you kind of realize very quickly that now, today, this moment is what we have. And we need to latch on it because in 5 minutes, that moment may not even be remembered. The person doesn't really care who you were in the past. They're just interested in the connection right now in this moment and how you feel. And that is kind of, that to me, that is one of the gifts of getting older is just letting go and being there.
Absolutely. That's so well said. Being present and being in this moment, that is a gift of aging. It is a gift of dementia. And I think we can learn from that.
And I think that will translate into the work that you do in the outdoors. And we'll get to that in a minute. But tell me first a bit about Clear Guidance. It's a consulting group, a care management group. What kind of things does that company offer, and your role, and how are you supporting people?
Yeah, so as you said, Clear Guidance, it is a consulting practice. We specialize specifically in dementia, the different forms of dementia, and also a lot of mental health challenges. We see that. We do traditional care management as well. And but I think what's really unique about Clear Guidance is the founder has a PhD in gerontology, and the diverse group of professionals that I work with is it's amazing. So we have a doctor of PT, an occupational therapist, 2 social workers, 2 nurses, another expressive arts therapist. And so that's what we do. So we consult with families across the country now, which is amazing, right? One of the gifts of COVID, right, is that we consult with families anywhere. And really my focus, which I guess you can tell, is really on independence, autonomy, purpose, and helping older adults to live joyfully where they are.
Yeah, and which we're all realizing more than ever how important it is to live in that moment, live joyfully, appreciate what we have, be mindful. COVID obviously reminded a lot of us of that lesson and what truly matters and what's important. A lot of people, especially older adults, had a very hard time with COVID. Personally, in the beginning, my anxiety went through the roof. I had several panic attacks within those first few months. When my husband would go grocery shopping, he'd come back and I would go into a panic attack, washing things down. That has certainly subsided, but I wasn't very productive in the beginning. You, on the other hand, maybe you had a hard moment, but then you became like ultra productive. You started a nonprofit. Tell me about how COVID, the introduction of COVID kind of sparked this need in you to create something about the importance of being present in the world as it is.
Right. Well, thank you. And I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that, because I mean, I definitely have anxiety too. And so it wasn't an easy time during COVID. And actually one of my children had a very difficult time with it, a teenager. So it's not something just for older adults, right? That people are impacted of all walks of life and ages. So, but as far as Evergreen Minds, it did come to me, throughout the years, I've been thinking about combining all of my loves, which is the natural world and expressive arts. And so a lot of walks outside is how Evergreen Minds was born. So having been an art therapist, as I said, and working in life enrichment, I noticed, this is really what started it, if you want to know. I noticed that in long-term care, people are often separated from the natural world, right? And you probably see this in your work. And it's really glaring. It's such an issue when people are living with dementia. So they are then locked behind doors. And so there's really little to no opportunity to have that daily connection to fresh air, sunlight, change of seasons, all of these things that we here, I should, meaning we on the outside, why isn't everybody have that same human right? And so it always bothered me for many, many years. And then I also was thinking, like, healthcare, like in our busyness, we kind of decide for these adults that it's not safe, right? Or it's not convenient, or whatever the reason is, that people living in these communities, that they kind of take away this daily interaction with nature. So I really wanted to develop an organization that embraces this concept and kind of reestablishes this interconnection that we already have. We're born with it, right? We are born interconnected
with nature,
with the earth, right? Mm-hmm. And like our heartbeat resonates at the same pace as the earth. So like this, there's no accident, right? So yeah, many walks on the Hudson River during COVID is how Evergreen Minds was born.
And we'll get to what your mission is in a minute. But one of the things you just said, Michelle, it sent chills up my arms about the basic, like, civil right, the basic rights that we as humans have to be outside. Mm-hmm. And you're right. People who are in supportive care environments so many are denied that basic human right. And for these individuals who are often confused and already feeling claustrophobic, locked in, don't know where I am, I'm wandering, I'm trying to get out, I feel trapped. And then we're not even creating a place for them to get outside and like, oh yes, the world, I need to breathe. You're so right. I never even thought of that as just a basic human right to have access to the outdoors. Oh gosh, now I'm like fired up. I should have put that in my book.
Like just
You're
imagine.
So right.
Just imagine for a moment, for anyone listening, if you were locked in your home or your apartment or even your room for a year and a half, much less the rest of your life. Just think during the COVID time, which was very detrimental to people's mental well-being, physical and mental well-being. But think about that, not even having the option to have that exchange and that connection with the natural world. I can't even imagine.
No, it's true. And I thought about that a lot during COVID for people. Like, I'm lucky, I have this beautiful backyard, and in the winter, we were very fortunate in the spring, right? Like a few months after COVID hit, we were fortunate to have the money to be able to buy a jacuzzi. And I'd always wanted one, but we never did it. And then last year, I have to do it now because I'll never get outdoors since I hate being cold. So I had so much time outdoors in that jacuzzi. So it was cold outside, but at least I was warm, and I am so grateful. And I thought so much when I was sitting in that jacuzzi about people in apartment buildings in the dead of winter in Montreal, and even in the summer. Where are they going when we're in quarantine and lockdown, and how trapped and suffocating that must feel? And these are people who can have reasonable thoughts and can understand things and properly analyze and make sense of it. But for someone with dementia whose executive functioning is impaired, they're not making sense of it. Yeah, we really need to look at that in terms of our long-term care structure, and just like the basic building, housing, the nuts and bolts of how things are built. Talk to me though about the nonprofit. How is it structured? Is it people come to you? Are you like outsourcing services? Talk to me a bit about it.
Yeah. So for years, as a creative arts therapist, I've always brought natural materials inside to people. Like I've done gardening, and all of that is important and wonderful. And I want anyone listening to continue to do that and grow things inside. But the whole mission of Evergreen Minds is to get people outside. So we founded it with the idea of connecting people. It's a really simple mission, connecting people together and to themselves, to one another, and to the natural world. And my cat is climbing up the screen. And also using expressive arts. So, I'll give you a little example. So it might be just appreciating with our senses, right? A lot of what we do with Evergreen Minds is, for instance, I'm holding a few community programs where anyone is invited to come. We keep it small. Obviously, we want it safe and we want people to connect. But we have one in Massachusetts that's happening where people are using their senses and they're creating some kind of a sensory art exercise. And then we're doing one community project here in New York where we work with the Cornell Cooperative Extension, and it's called No Child Left Inside. So now these teenagers are partnering with the folks living with dementia, and it's kind of a beautiful partnership, and they're going to explore their different senses. So, I mean, it's just such a beautiful kind of a mission. And so it might be something like, might be simple drumming, it might be poetry, it might be movement, exploring sounds, just being still, right? And feeling with our body. You've heard of exteroception and interoception, the senses within our body and outside of our body. So, it might just be so many different levels of expressive arts and connection.
I love too that you've created something that's engaging teens, because, we need to fire up the younger generation about older adults, and because of the demographics, they're the ones who are going to be creating all the programs and supporting all of us as we're aging. And it's essential for them to get on board. And these teens are amazing. I mean, when they decide to take up an issue, Black Lives Matter, bam, that thing it goes off. They're so powerful and smart and bright and, unreserved, and just like, we're going to fight for this and say what we want and do what we want. And you old people are going to listen to us, So how smart to connect with teens for that. So then how do you, like, for example, with teens and for people with dementia, to keep them safe and not overly stimulated or getting them confused when they're out in nature, how are you training people and how are you doing that? Is it not as complicated as one would imagine?
I think it's not as complicated. For one thing, we're not taking people on rigorous hikes, right? This is more about being an experience together outdoors. Of course, before the program, we do some training with the teenagers or with our volunteers, and so that they understand about dementia. But really, it's kind of an organic process. People naturally connect with one another, and it is really beautiful to witness. And I think you don't need the ability to verbally communicate, right? That's why we can communicate through our senses. We can communicate with a look, right? Or with repeating sounds.
Yeah.
There's just other ways to communicate that don't rely on language or memory, for that matter. So, yeah.
That's amazing. So, I mean, it's really wonderful to hear. And is there any movement? I mean, I know your nonprofit is in the newer end, but has there been any movement or excitement or, interest by long-term care communities in these kinds of things to create these outings where you can kind of outsource this concept, this mission, your work, and train internally, like a train the trainer type thing, to get it spread out?
Thank you so much for asking. So our president is in California, and some of our board members are out west too, and in Montana. So our long-term goal is really to train organizations in how to do this kind of Evergreen Minds method of getting people reconnected back with the natural world. And this can happen in a parking lot. This can happen in their patio space. This can happen if they take a bus trip to the riverfront. It can happen anywhere. And so that's our goal, is to work that way. That's how we would actually make money. Right now, we're hoping to get grants. We rely on donations. And so we do, and something exciting. So I am able, on July 1st, I'm going into a long-term care home for the first time. I haven't been in since March 10th. That was my last time I was in there. So I have been invited by a home to come and guide a Evergreen Minds program at the home. So I'm so excited, because that's, something we never would have thought about 2 years ago, right? But I'm like, yay, I can get in, and I can be with people again, and they can be with one another outside. And so I'm
Oh, that's great, Michelle. The door has been opened somewhere.
Yeah.
And the more that you can have people willing to take a chance and try something different, the more testimonials you'll have, and then the more it can expand. You brought something up really interesting. You said you can do this in a parking lot. And this is one of my questions is, okay, again, I have a beautiful backyard. I can make it happen. You clearly have a beautiful backyard. You can connect with nature. For those who don't have the same kind of access, I live in a city. I just happen to be in the suburbs and have space. But for those people who don't have access to that, how can you encourage people to use the outdoor space for their own mental health, their mind, their spiritual connection when they're in a parking lot? Like, how do you do that?
Right. So if you like, I can kind of give you a little idea about, what the benefits are to being outdoors. So obviously, if you go into the forest, you're going to have more benefits because there's more trees. So the trees, particularly evergreen trees, but trees and plants, they give off chemicals called phytoncides. And these are magical chemicals, or essential oils that we breathe in. So as we're inhaling, the trees are exhaling, and it's like this reciprocal process. So these chemicals protect the trees from bacteria and fungus and things that are trying to attack it. So when we breathe those chemicals in, we're taking in those protective chemicals. And it also stimulates something inside of us. These, they're called natural killer cells. So it's kind of an amazing, cycle here. So now our body kicks up, it ramps up and fights off anything trying to attack our body. So autoimmune disorders, cancer, those type of things, like it really helps to protect our bodies and grow our immune system. There's lots and lots of physiological benefits to being outdoors. Again, you don't have to be in the forest. You just have to be present, be outside. Lowered blood pressure, lowered cortisol, anxiety, depression, those things are lowered. Lower inflammation, improve sleep. So that, again, all of these things we think about are good for us. It's good for all of us, older adults. Sleep is a big problem right now. Spend some time each day outdoors. That will help improve your sleep, right? Getting that sunlight in our skin, getting that vitamin D, this will all help us. It even helps cognition. So, so that's kind of the physiological benefits. And I think what's really important, and I want to kind of make this point, is that it's not only that we're receiving these benefits from nature, but we're also kind of giving back. So we start to form this relationship, or reconnect the relationship that some of us may have forgotten about, right, over time because we're so busy. So, it's wonderful.
Oh, it's so nice, and it's true that it is an immune booster in so many ways. You're talking about physiologically how it literally is an immune booster, but also, of course, our mental health aspects and the movement and the exercise, which usually comes with being outdoors. Of course, you can just sit still as well. I love all of this that you're saying, and I know for me, when I do get outdoors, I feel so much better. Certainly the vitamin D with the sun. I mean, starting in May, my mood, it just like shoots up. And then once we get into about mid-September and the temperature starts changing, I mean, I just feel the drop. I don't know if it's technically seasonal affective disorder, but I mean, it's very hard for me during those months, which is why I try to get outside. But even when the sun is out and I don't feel the heat, to me, it does make a difference. Like, I like feeling the actual heat on my skin. But I love these benefits that you're talking about. Now, you're mentioning a lot about the forest, and you have something called forest bathing, which I can imagine what that means, but why don't you describe to me, what is forest bathing?
So forest bathing is pretty much just what I described. It's actually in Japanese, it's called Shinrin-yoku. And it started in the 80s. The Japanese government recognized that the whole tech boom economy that was happening was really showing health concerns and health decline in people. So there was a lot of autoimmune disorders and a rise in cancer and so forth, mental health disorders. So the Japanese government actually kind of coined that term of forest bathing, and now they prescribe it. Doctors prescribe people to go out, and they have forests set aside, so people guide people onto walks and reconnect with the natural world. And it needs to catch on over here, right? Like, imagine getting a prescription, your doctor's like, Stephanie, this is what you're going to do this week, and you go do it. And it's people think, oh, I'm too busy, I don't have time. And that, I think, just takes some practice. Start small. Just step outside at a time of day that feels comfortable for you. Like, if you don't like heat, come out in the early morning or come out in the evening, right? And just listen, right? Just feel, listen, smell, taste. It's something we can all do, and it takes practice, right? It takes, don't they say, 6 to 8 weeks to form a new habit? So just, kind of start slow wherever you are.
You're bringing up something that I find hysterical, is that it takes practice to just sit and breathe and listen. I mean, I agree with you 100%. And I'm not laughing at you when I say it's hysterical, but it's completely true. Like, we don't even know anymore how to do nothing, because we associate that with like laziness, because we're supposed to be doing and achieving and being stimulated all the time. And I especially think for younger kids, big problem with phones. I had to drop off, this is sort of an aside, but it's talking about how we're not connecting anymore with even people around us. I had to drop off the PE clothes for my son because he forgot them this week. And when I went to go bring them to the school, they must have had a break or something. All these kids were outside. They're in clusters. Every single kid had a phone in their hand looking down at the phone. Now, they might have been talking about the same thing on the phone, but no one was looking at each other. We don't know anymore how to just detox, let go, sit down, breathe, look in nature. And so I like your concept about this with the forest bathing, and what you're doing with Evergreen Minds is having that guide, because I think we're so used to having answers and tools of what we're supposed to do that we're almost like reluctant to try things on our own in case we're going to do it wrong, quote unquote, even though there is no wrong here. So I like the concept of having that guide to just show you that it's actually very simple. Walk, everybody be quiet. Listen to the crunch of the leaves on the ground in the fall. That's all you have to do. That's your task. Listen to the crunch of the leaves. It actually is pretty simple.
Right. And in fact, I'm actually going for my certification to be a forest therapy guide through the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy. It's so beautiful, but you're absolutely right. I think to quiet our minds and just accept that there's no right and no wrong, and just being fully present, it's a challenge because we have trained our brains to be busy. And so it is so beautiful. Once you kind of get that, like, okay, I'm just going to come out here and greet the land and just be present with this land right now. Like, it's amazing how many things kind of shift in your whole life, I think. Mm-hmm. A sense of gratitude and appreciation and, just relationships with all the beings, I think. So important.
Absolutely. So how can people learn more about either Clear Guidance or Evergreen Minds? Like, how can people help support your mission here? And also, if they're interested in consulting and they need the advice of you or one of your colleagues at Clear Guidance, how do people get a hold of you, Michelle?
Thank you so much. Yes. So Clear Guidance, you can go to clearguidance.org. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn and message me. That's fine. And Evergreen Minds is evergreenminds.org. I'm sorry, Evergreen Minds. Yeah, evergreenminds.org. Oh my gosh, because it's Evergreen Minds Inc. I'm sorry, but evergreenminds.org. And you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on LinkedIn. And you can donate. We would be very grateful to accept donations in any amount, because that helps fund these expressive art and natural programming natural programming services that we have around. We're starting around the country and just 3 states right now, but we're growing. So,
well, you got to start somewhere, right? And for professionals on the LinkedIn platform, because this is going on several platforms, for professionals, are you looking for other people to join your team to learn your mission and the process and to start, sending it out in the world and in the area in which those professionals live?
Sure. I would welcome any conversation with people. So if you want to email me, you can email me at Michelle, Michell. Oh, I'm getting my emails confused. Michelle, my Clear Guidance email, I'm sorry, is Michelle Olson, as you can see on the screen, at clearguidance.org. And for Evergreen Minds, sorry about that, it's Molson, Molson, at evergreenminds.org. So just reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you about, growing Evergreen Minds in the place where you are.
Excellent. And you can also just direct message, and I can connect you with Michelle. I have her email, and I can send you links and stuff too. Thanks so much, Michelle, for encouraging us to do this outside. You're absolutely right. This was incredible. Our Wi-Fi stayed the whole time. We had no cutouts. We were blessed today to do this outside. And why don't we just take a minute? Let's take 30 seconds, and for everyone who's watching, and just breathe. I'm going to look at the clock. We're going to do 30 seconds. That was 30 seconds. Wasn't so bad, right? Mm-hmm. And I can hear, because I have headphones in, I'm not hearing the birds really in my yard, but I'm hearing all the birds in your yard. And it's lovely. I actually love, especially Saturday and Sunday mornings when I'm not rushed, and I'm usually the first one up, and I bring my cup of coffee and sit outside. And because people aren't really leaving for work, all I'm hearing are birds. It's so lovely. It's really, I agree with you, Michelle. It's really nice to get outdoors, and I hope that this encourages people to do that for themselves, and also for our care communities, for the professionals who are watching. Maybe you can think about how you can integrate some outdoor time for your residents. Maybe with Michelle, and she can give you some guidance there. So thanks a lot, Michelle.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm happy to share tips for anyone on how to kind of incorporate the natural world into their daily life. So thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
Excellent. Okay, hang on, Michelle. I'm going to end the broadcast, but hang on for a sec.